Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS LP Stockton.
It's KXVS, the voice of Stockton, and it's time for the Tom Patti Reality Show with your host, Tom Patti.
Welcome and thank you, Governor. I sure appreciate it and glad to be here. This is the Tom Patti Reality Show, and I am Tom Patti, where we discuss everything that's local, political, current, and real. And thank you all for joining us today. Of course, in the studio with me, we've got our secret surprise guest we're going to get to, so be patient with that beautiful smile. And my trusty sidekick, Ted. Theodore, Lehrer, appreciate it. What's the red flower that you're wearing?
This is a Veterans Day poppy. It's actually very popular in Commonwealth countries to honor in the lead up to Veterans Day, or Remembrance Day, as we call it in the Commonwealth countries where I've spent a significant amount of time working and living, residing. It's a way to honor the veterans, particularly those in the First World War who fought on behalf of the Allies in the United States.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Excellent.
So,
well, nice to see you wear it. I know
absolutely.
we have Veterans Day coming up.
Remembrance Day and Veterans Day, it's the same day, November 11th. It's the 11th hour of the 11th month, and it honors the veterans from the First World War who fought for our freedoms and died for our freedoms, and this is a way to honor them. Veterans Day, and it's
thanks.
It's
Thanks for wearing that. I appreciate
absolutely.
it. So,
it's been 2 weeks. We were on hiatus last week because Supervisor Patti, you were very busy on a number of activities related to your role as the 3rd District County Supervisor. One of those activities in which you were participating was a tour of a desalination plant, and we were talking about water in an earlier radio broadcast. What did you learn at the desalination plant?
I went down to Carlsbad Desal Plant, which is the latest and newest that just opened up online within about a year. It took almost 20 years to get that plant into production, about 10 plus years of challenges by environmental groups and all sorts of legal wranglings, but eventually it came through and it passed, and it's not doesn't have the concerns, the environmental effects that all of the challenges were I guess alleging would happen. So the water's it's online. It's supplying water for up to 500,000 families down in Southern California. So it's a really fantastic program. And it's really interesting just to see the process and the filtration system and high pressure, 900 PSI, I believe it is. It's
Wow.
pretty high rate going through all these various stage micron filters, and it was really neat while we were there. It was fun to see that technology at work.
Interesting. Now, is there talk about bringing more desalination plants to California? I know Israel uses desalination plants for a lot of their water needs. You mentioned that also on an earlier broadcast. Is there talk about more desal plants here in California?
There's discussions. There's nothing in the works.
Okay.
But there's discussion about it. There's still environmental challenges, and there's people that are opposed to it, but there's some discussions about it. And I think as the narrative increases that we should have water and regional self-sustainability, and certainly a diversified water supply, desalination would play an important part of that. I know that Santa Barbara had a shuttered, back when we had a drought in the 90s, Santa Barbara created and had a desal plant. It was some of the old technology, so it was very high consumption of energy, and it wasn't very...
it wasn't energy efficient.
Yeah, it wasn't very efficient.
The cost-benefit analysis wasn't in its
so they
favor.
phased it out, but now they're retrofitting it and bringing in some new technology. And as we speak, that technology keeps getting refined and becoming more productive and less energy demand.
Outstanding. Now, I also understand, at first you told me something, I thought maybe you went to a comedy club, something called LAFCO, and it turns out that it's not a comedy club, it's the Local Agency Formation Commission, which sounds a lot less exciting than a comedy club. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about LAFCO.
LAFCOs are up and down, so I am part of the local LAFCO agency, and LAFCOs are up and down the state of California. Now, they're I guess, self-described element of relevancy is that they're the sphere of influence. So they get involved in land use and a lot of appropriations and a myriad of things. We've actually even talked, I went to one seminar talking about unfunded pension liabilities and how LAFCOs should be moving forward with narratives to present to the cities and the municipalities so we can get a coalition of support. So it's a great agency to be part of. And so it was my first meeting with them, and being on the board, I'm one of the representatives. I went with Jesus Andrade from the city, as well as Miguel Villapudua, and Doug Keene, the mayor of Lodi. He was there as well, and he's the current chair. So we had a great time down there, and met with a lot of counterparts and discussed some good relative issues.
For the county.
For the county and for the state.
Oh, and for the state as well. That's good. Now, speaking of Lodi, I understand they had a State of the City address recently.
This morning.
Oh.
We went.
Well,
Doug Keene.
That's very recent.
Mayor Keene gave a great and resounding, and he laid out really fantastic. He talked about past and new. And he really broke down. He talked about past and showed things that have shuttered or things that have changed, and then he highlighted, of course, the counter to it of the new and the more progressive things that are happening. So Lodi is a booming region. Obviously, it's got wine. It's got Lodi Lake is now hosting on a regular basis visitors. They're coming in from this area regionally, kayaking and just enjoying the outdoors. So there's a myriad of things going on in Lodi, and the current mayor, Doug Keene, as well as the council and the Lodi Chamber of Commerce and the business people that are involved in the community are all working very hard. They're very progressive, and a lot of housing development going on right now. Over 350 homes are being built in Lodi that are permitted and in different stages of process.
Well, I know on the board you have a great working relationship with Chuck Wynn, who represents Lodi on the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, of course. And Chuck was there today.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Everybody. Chuck's doing a great job as a supervisor, and that's his district. So
right.
He's one of those hands-on guys. So he's doing a fantastic job up there.
That's great to hear. And we're almost approaching the year anniversary. Did you know that this coming Monday, is the year anniversary of Tom's election to the Board of Supervisors? So.
It's funny, I was thinking about that on Halloween, because last Halloween we were trick-or-treating. I'm handing out vote flyers.
I'm sure you were there. I'm sure all the children loved you in the neighborhood. Little 6-year-olds were coming hoping for Reese's peanut butter cups, and you're giving them walk pieces.
I did. I had kids walking for me. I paid all the neighborhood kids to go around, cover different areas, and walk from my neighborhood. I absolutely did.
That does not surprise. Well, that was how we won, or how you won the election. That's
it really
fantastic.
It's funny what a difference a year is, and how much less, how more enjoyable and less stress it was.
Well, I have a quick question for Governor Don. Governor, I know we're on the radio now, and I know that we're online as well with video. Do you know if the FBI actually listens to this show, particularly Mueller's team? Do you know if they're listening? Because
I'm pretty sure they're listening to everything.
Okay, then I'm not going to talk about our friends in Moscow that supported us, particularly online. So we're going to go to our next issue. No, we can go back and edit that out, right?
До свидания.
Oh, okay. I know exactly what that means. Don't ask me how I know what that means. But, well, let's just say I've never been to Moscow, or at least I haven't been since, Tama Brisbane, how are you doing today? It's a wonderful surprise to have you at our desk today. Tama Brisbane, why don't you...
Tama Brisbane. We are very thrilled to have you as our guest today.
Now, your name rhymes with
Drama.
Which I
Right.
I grew up pronouncing a drama, but that's fine. So I will have to do some pronunciation differences. But Tama, tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us what it's like with some projects you got. First off, let's hear your bio. Let's hear a little bit about you.
Oh, the bio. I am executive director of a nonprofit in Stockton known as With Our Words. We have been working for the past 13 years with youth and young adults using the art forms of spoken word and slam poetry. I am also very blessed to be the City of Stockton's very first poet laureate.
A no small accomplishment. It was fantastic with high accolades.
That is an amazing blessing.
Yeah, but well deserved and hard earned. Explain through your leadership, what are you doing, and how are you meeting with your students, and what's the interaction in the community?
It's interesting because the position of poet laureate is almost an outgrowth of what I do naturally as executive director of With Our Words, which is bringing poetry and activated literacy to an audience of youth and young adults. My comfortable cohort is middle school and high school students, but as poet laureate, I get to interact with the elementary school kids all the way up to grown-ups and seniors, just the entire swath of the community of Stockton, and getting them interested in poetry and showing them what it does, what it doesn't do, and how it's relevant to our lives and how we can use it as a force of comfort, of change, and creativity.
Now, one of the things when people have the opportunity to get to know you and see you and be around you, there's a fantastic energy, very positive, very loving, very, very giving. And that obviously reflects, I believe, in a lot of what you do and what you're offering and your words in the community. Where's that coming from? What's generating inside of you?
A love of arts. A love of arts, and the story goes back to when I was a little kid. I am a child of the Watts riots. I grew up in Southern California, and some of my earliest memories of that period were during the riots, literally seeing the embers of the city floating in the air and seeing National Guard stationed on the roof of the grocery stores where my family shopped. And in order to balance that trauma, my mother took me to see the traveling production of Raisin in the Sun, the original traveling production.
Really?
So I got to see on stage Sidney Poitier, Ivan Dixon, Ruby Dee, and B. Richards. And
wow.
It changed everything for me, not only to see the magic of the story, but to see the magic of the story voiced by people that looked like me, and using language that powerfully, it just had a lasting impact, and I knew that art could change things.
That's fantastic, and that's amazing, because some people could see the same show and walk away with different impressions. Not that it wouldn't be a positive or enjoyable, but also look at that as an inspiration and of a new way of being or seeing or looking at something, and motivating you to have a strong voice and to evolve to being the poet that you are now is truly amazing.
Oh, well, then it became all about words, because my grandfather had 2 girls, and then his 2 girls betrayed him by having 2 other girls. And so he looked at me and he said, "You're going to be the one." And so then I became the one that we would read the New York Times sports, Los Angeles Times sports section together.
Okay.
And at that time, we were fans of the Los Angeles Rams. So I grew up reading about Roman Gabriel and the fearsome force.
Is that right?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Rosie Greer?
And Rosie Greer, yeah.
Yeah.
And we would follow the Bruins, the UCLA Bruins. Mike Warren was my very first crush, so I was always ready to read a story about Mike Warren. And so language and sports and that whole thing just became part of growing up, and I just never lost the love for words.
Yeah, and probably your grandfather would have you read to him out loud, obviously, and and the joy you get out of that, and the inflection, and learning just to learn to play with the words, and build it, and bring it up and bring it down, and just learning that inflection.
Yes. Yeah, I actually, there is a moment with my grandfather reading about the fearsome foursome and talking about how the coach at the time could win the NFL with just his water boys. And I had gotten the inflection wrong, and my grandmother said, no, not just his water boys, but with his water boys.
Right.
And so I learned inflection, and it was all about the inflection when you're reading the Times.
That's fantastic. So talk to me about some of the accolades locally. I know you've worked with, you have interact programs with kids, as you mentioned, and there's is it annual competitions?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah,
And
there's an
what do those
annual
look like?
competition that we have had since 2007, known as the All City Poetry Slam. And that competition is region-wide, and from that we pick the 6 poets that represent the city of Stockton and the Central Valley at the Brave New Voices International Poetry Festival, where over 600 youth and young adults from the ages of 13 to 19 gather for a week on a college campus. Writing workshops, community service projects, youth town hall meetings to talk about how this art form can be used to change their cities. And then at the very end of that week, there's a competition to see who has the best team of spoken word artists.
And you've actually, without much surprise, you've been, is it more than one time you guys have been walked away with that winning?
No, we've actually never won Brave New Voices.
Okay.
But we have 1, 2, 3, at least half a dozen times been featured as one of the teams that you need to see, like best of show. And we have been, one of our pieces has been archived on the HBO DVD, Russell Simmons Presents Brave New Voices. We've been honored by Robert Redford's Sundance Institute for our poetry that speaks to environmental issues, which gave rise to an entirely new project inside of With Our Words called We Rock Green Mics. And so we consistently are talking about issues of sun, soil, sand of the region that grows us. And our kids have been honored. We had the #1 youth poet in the country a few years back. And so we've gone from who is Stockton to, uh-oh, here comes Stockton.
Yeah, that's I'm sure it's traveling around throughout the country where you're going to go to different regions and different colleges as host.
Yes.
What an amazing experience that by engaging with these kids and enrolling them in this competition and utilizing talent and developing it. Think about the horizon that's opened up to them, where they're going, what they're seeing, and meeting contemporaries and building relationships and lasting friendships that can be transformational for their life. And they come back to the community with a voice. They come back with messaging and something that's very positive, I'm certain.
It is absolutely transformational, and it is the reason that we, excuse me, it's the reason that we do this competition in the first place, because we understand that where we are in Stockton and the Central Valley is sometimes geographically isolated. And for our youth and young adults to be exposed to the world at large, you've got to travel, and that traveling introduces them to horizons that are beyond the 209 or the 916 or the 415, and they realize that they can connect with youth from Ireland or youth from Barbados or youth from South Africa. And then when they come back, because the idea is that we want them to come back and not get comfortable ever again, and understanding that now you have a choice. You've got to move forward because you've seen more.
You see more.
And now you know that you can do more, be more. Your voice is important in lots of larger conversations than just what's going on your block. Not that your block isn't important, but you are now a citizen of the planet.
Yeah.
And they do that through this art form, which is, by the way, just a big old English lesson.
Right. Sure.
It's writing and research and editing and revising and outlining, and they realize that these same skills transfer to their academics, which is why we have inside of With Our Words a 99% high school graduation rate, a 93% college attendance rate, and at least 4, maybe 5 of our kids are now teaching.
How about that?
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
Cool. So then,
it's a big pat on the back to say, like, yeah, yes, I'm part of this, and look at the results. It's not, you're not, trying to swim upstream here. You're taking kids, they're willing participants. You're helping shape, mold, and bring out from them what's inside of them, what they're capable of.
We could put willing in quotation marks a little bit there, Tom, because this art form, whether it's through With Our Words or even as through my duties as poet laureate, this is an extension of their school day.
Yeah.
And they've already spent 7 hours, doing this same thing. But to once they get in the program and once they take the workshops and they realize what kind of work is being required of them, I would say if I'm in front of a group of 30 students and I can get 10 of them to continue, that's a great return on the investment. In my work as poet laureate, I have come to see what an appreciation there is among our youth and young adults for the creative applications of literacy if you are willing to meet them where they are. They will write, they will read, they will conquer America's #1 fear, which is public speaking, and they will take on social issues, personal issues, and they will do it in a way that becomes profound and impactful. And I can't think of a better job than being able to do what I do.
It's amazing. And you touch on a couple of things that you even just talk about opening up the boundaries, right? And seeing that, there's the world out there. I always think about, you see some, small little graffiti on a little side of somebody's building. Well, first off, you're putting graffiti on something you don't own. You're marking territory that is a little pin dot of the world. So think bigger. Don't just think like, oh, this is my little block or this is my street, I'm going to let people know I'm here. That's, go let the world know you're here. Find your voice, find your passion, go pursue it, and bring something positive forward. Not sit there and, deface something that's not yours, that you have no claim to because you live close by. So it's, by bringing people out and opening up their eyes and expanding their horizons, it's there's a whole new world out there.
Yeah.
There's more than just that neighborhood you live in.
Now, in defense of my writers, hip hop heads will know that a writer is a graffiti artist. There's a profound difference between tagging and graffiti, and that's that defacement, that public defacement, which is just basically vandalism.
Sure.
That's tagging.
Yes.
But graffiti is an art form, and there are places across the country, across the world, that dedicate public spaces to creating live
murals
art.
And beautiful.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'm in total agreement
that.
with you about the tagging.
The tagging, yes.
And because I'm poet laureate, language is important.
Thank you.
Tagging,
you
bad.
got me. You called me on that.
Graffiti art, good.
And then point well taken. I agree completely.
Yeah. I like what you just had to say. Now, can you just, I'm interested in the Peace Garden that you are working on. Can you share with us your insights on the Peace Garden?
You have got to first start by giving all due props to Sandy Huber.
Really?
And
okay.
the work that she is doing over there at Groupie and at University Park for connecting with Sylvia Villalobos, and who's the founder of the World International Peace Gardens. And last year was the very first one, the inaugural Peace Gardens. And they put in hours and hours and hours of envisioning the space, creating it, curating it, and then having the genius and the foresight to involve the youth of our community in creating peace poems.
Oh.
And then creating the competition. We're going to create poems and we're going to install them in the Peace Garden. And then they asked me to write a poem for the inaugural ceremony, which I did, and I was honored that Sandy thought enough of that piece to submit it to the United Nations as representative of Stockton's voice inside of the UN's International World Peace Day. And then she further honored me by having that same piece that I wrote last year in the welcome packet that they gave to Ringo Starr when he came and played the Hope. Not knowing that Ringo Starr was my very favorite Beatle.
Really?
So, absolutely. I know everybody fell out over Paul and John,
And
but
John, yeah.
no, Ringo was always it for me. So to know that
Ringo actually was one of the smarter and more engaged with not only the business but writing, and I read a little bio on him, an article about how influential he was and how very important.
Oh, he was the brains behind the outfit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
Paul was the looks, John was the conscience, Ringo was the brains, and George was George.
Yeah. I met him once.
Did you?
I did
Ringo?
meet him. Yeah, I met Ringo.
Wow.
I met Ringo and I met Paul. Certainly not John. He died right when I moved to New York. That was when he had died. My apartment was right around from
the Dakota?
From the Dakota where he lived. But yeah, so when I used to work at the House of Blues, and so he came through.
Okay.
One time. It was
Okay,
cool.
yeah.
Super great. We talked, hung out. He was a real cool guy.
That's good to know. Well, he's got my poem. So
Yeah.
So that was presented to Ringo Starr when he and Todd Rundgren played
Right.
about a year ago at this time.
Yes.
In
And so
November.
this year, when they did the next inauguration of the World Peace Day, and they had expanded the competition, and they decided that they were going to have 13 winners. And I challenged myself with the poem this year, and I created a poem that was 13 verses with 13 words in each verse.
Right on.
Really?
I did. Can I tell you how many pieces of paper that I balled up and threw around my room?
Do you write pen and paper or computer?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I am new age. I'm 21st century, but I'm also very old school and very tactile. I've got to have paper and pen.
Yeah.
So I'm doing both of them. And so in creating that piece, and when I presented it, Sylvia Villalobos was there, and she was very appreciative of the poem and said, this needs to go to Atlanta with the winning poem from Stockton. And I said, cool beans, right? I'm thinking my poem is going to go to Atlanta. And then she said, no, you need to go with it. And she cleared it with the organizers in Atlanta. And so that was how I got a chance to present the poem Roses Piece by Piece at Ebenezer Baptist Church, which was the home church of Dr. King, and standing behind the actual podium.
That Dr.
Wow.
King, wow.
Yes, yes, chills.
Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be a very moving experience.
You
but-
can't be in that place and not feel the history swirling in the air, and I did. And as I was there, it came to me when I came off the stage, and Martin Luther King III, his son, who was there, he said to me, your words matter. And in that moment, I said, they've got to matter more. I've got to come back and do more with this opportunity of being poet laureate, and more with the work that I do.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, question for you. So something like that comes along, and you challenge yourself with 13 sentences, 13 words per in that. How long does it take you to sit down and create something? Can you do it on the fly, and within an hour you have something, or are you working on something? Is that a project? So I look at this as a project. Like I met Leroy Neiman one time, the famous artist,
Yes.
right? And he was actually a big avid boxing fan, and so he knew we knew each other quite well, and spent time with him. I used to go to a studio on the Upper West Side in Manhattan when I lived there, and a big surprise to me was, he goes, I look at a painting as a problem. He goes, and I need to solve that problem. And every stroke of the brush helps me solve that problem. So, and it just totally took me as, it wasn't even that he looks at it as, I see a picture as an inspiration and I try to capture what I see or something. He said, it was just, it struck me. He said, I look at it as a problem. I need to solve this problem. And the stroke of my brush will allow me to, it helps me solve that problem. So, so I thought that was interesting from a very well-known artist, of course. So I wonder if you look at that as like, okay, I have this, I'm looking for a solution, I have a challenge. How are you, how are you looking at your work when you're creating something?
And it is poem specific.
Okay.
There are some poems that I will look at as a challenge, and there are some poems that will come, and I teach my students that very seldom do you write sequentially.
Okay.
Like the way we do our essays, beginning, middle, end.
Mm-hmm.
Poetry doesn't work like that. The end will come to you. A piece, a fragment will come to you, and then you can get in a zone where you can then write a little bit more and more and more, and then you might hit a wall and you might have to step back and breathe. I know some friends of mine take years to complete a poem. A few weeks ago, I was at an event, Mayor Tubbs's kickoff with his literacy program with the Stockton Heat. And the president of the organization challenged me to write a piece that included 2 of the names of the players that were there.
Any 2?
No.
He chose the 2.
The 2 specific players.
Okay.
Because I was admiring their jerseys. I said, what would it take to get one of those jerseys? If you can write a poem that has their names in it, we'll talk about it. So that meant I had to come up with a poem inside of 3.5 minutes.
Oh, really? Wow.
They do owe me that shirt, though.
Yeah.
Just want you to know they do owe me that shirt. But the process of creating a poem really is poem specific. There are some pieces that I am still working on, and I started maybe a couple of years ago because I know that they are like a mosaic, and it's going to take time to find that specific phrase, and I know that it needs time to marinate. And then there are other poems that I know I've only got a deadline, and sometimes it's like being a journalist on a deadline.
Sure.
So it's
now, do you ever look at something? I've done some creative writing. In fact, I wrote and sold a screenplay at one point, and I've done some creative writing along the way, and I'll put it in the drawer and sometimes hit a wall, bring it out and come back, and like, there's the answer, just looking at it, and you read it through. So that said, obviously works are always a constant challenge and ever moving. Do you ever look at something that you're acclaimed for having done and completed, read it and go, ooh, I needed to change this? Or do you walk away from it?
Oh, it's like almost any piece of art. They will have to make you walk away from it, and you can always look at it and go, I could have tweaked that right
that
there.
Little bit, like a word or something, right?
Yeah. And there's a discipline in saying, okay, cut.
Right.
It's done. Let it go. Let it breathe. Let it have its own life, and love it and appreciate it for its beauty and for its flaws. And the flaws are always going to be there, because you can always go back and try and make it perfect. But if you get caught up in that, you'll never let the piece go.
Yeah, and they see that with the X-rays. They see that with some of the most renowned artists in the world. They can X-ray the paintings and see the proofs below it, and how it constantly changed, and the canvases reveal a little bit of a history to that work. And it is interesting, because I'm sure even when it's hanging in a museum, an artist can look at it and go like, oh, that lighting on that, I should have. You could look at the ear. That ear, it just wasn't quite
exactly.
Oh, it was bugging me that day too. And they always have that discerning eye.
And then when you've got the entire dictionary to choose from, like, oh, there's a better word I know. See, now
I used to write with, and the very limited scope. I did sell the screenplay, so it was somewhat of a success. But the little bit of writing I did, I always had the thesaurus there, because one of the number one notes, and I did a screenwriting class at UCLA, and the one note that was constant in the class, he says, "I've already seen it or heard it that way. Give it to me something different. Tell it to me some other different way." And so you're constantly challenged to present it different, to be more original. Right. And so I used to write with a thesaurus and dictionaries and just all this stuff to look up words and say it, do it different, and make it unique.
Oh, we call those tools to flow with.
Yeah.
And I will tell my students, young and more mature, the thesaurus is your friend, and if you don't have the actual thesaurus, there's an app for that.
Yeah. Now, how important is rhyming?
Is not. There are 2 rules to poetry.
Okay.
1, it is okay if it rhymes.
Okay.
2, it is okay if it doesn't rhyme.
Those are 2 good rules.
Ta-da!
Yeah.
And then look at the scope that you have.
Right.
Now, for some of our listeners who may not be familiar with a thesaurus, is there another word for a thesaurus?
Thesaurus.
Oh, okay.
Dictionary of alternative terms.
There you
go. I like that.
I like that.
That works.
Now, among these many initiatives that you're currently engaged in here in Stockton, you've accepted to begin the undertaking of a new role with the superintendent of Stockton Unified School District, who's also a city council member here for the city. He made cleaning up the town literally, as in he would go out and pick up garbage that people were illegally dumping, and it really got under his skin that people would do that. He approached you to start an initiative. Can you tell us a little bit about that initiative and what that means, and what do you think? How do you see this project evolving?
So wait, first off, we're talking about Dan Wright.
I'm sorry. Yes,
so Dan Wright, our acting school superintendent and current Stockton city councilman.
Yes,
doing an
and
outstanding
also
job.
my partner in positivity, who was with me in Denver.
I love
when
that. He was with you?
Yeah, when
Really?
we got the
with the kids?
All-American City Award in 20...
Outstanding.
He was also there in 2007, this year, a few months ago.
Yeah,
when
he's
we got
2
it
for
again.
2.
He is.
You want an All-American City? Take Dan Wright.
Yeah.
That's how that works.
Yeah, see.
So that's the accolade I was talking about earlier. Then I'm sorry, there's more than one competition you go to. So the All-American City, that's the high achievement. That's one of the achievements you had gotten.
Yeah, I was asked to participate in that project by Mayor Tubbs and another local writer and amazing poet, Brandon Leake, and I took charge of that delegation of 36 people and decided that we would do the presentation for Stockton as a spoken word piece. No bells, no whistles, no costumes, no music, just 36 people telling Stockton's story. And that's what got us that.
Okay, gotcha.
That award. And Dan Wright was part of that.
I see.
Right.
And
Okay.
Dan was very good in memorizing his section of the presentation. So I'm always down to work with Dan on a project. So this one that he is taking leadership with is kind of near and dear to our heart, because again, it's an environmental issue, and I like our kids to write about environmental issues and the issue of litter, of trash, literally trashing Stockton. We decided that would be good for us to take on, and so the project is called Talking Trash, and it is going to be community service. It is also going to be about literacy, because Poet Laureate, that's going to be what we're talking about. Engaging youth and young adults to get their hands into this issue and learn what is at stake, learn the terms of art that surround it. We're going to do surveys, we're going to create a poem, we're going to create a video, we're going to create a PSA, and all of it is going to be through the genre of creative writing. And so I'm extremely excited.
And which school? Is there a school or the
There
school
is
district?
a group.
A group, okay.
There is a group of young women that I had the pleasure of workshopping couple of months ago from the OWL movement, which is the brainchild of Tashante McCoy Ham. And OWL is the acronym for One Woman's Love. And these are women who have lost children and relatives to violence, but are choosing to face that trauma through love. And so the young ladies involved in this movement are the junior owls. And so I had a chance to work with them over at Chavez Library, and immediately knew that they would be the right voices to work inside of this project. And I ran that
great.
by Dan, and he was like, yes, go.
That's
Oh,
great.
So we're yes, go.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. Now, moving on as we get into the last segment of our show for this week. Tomorrow, Supervisor Patti is going to be at the Disabled American Veterans Patriots Ball,
Yes.
and that is going to be raising money for the San Joaquin County chapter of the DAV.
Would it surprise you if I told you that Miss Julie Dameron, who is truly the Stocktonian of the Year, and hopefully is awarded as such, would it surprise you if you found out that she was one of the driving forces behind the Patriots Ball?
It would not.
Cannot surprise you. Cannot surprise anybody as much as that gal does.
Exactly. It surprised me when there's an event in Stockton that she's not a part of.
That's true. That's a better way to look at it.
Yeah.
Well, you know what we're doing is Julie, when she was putting this together, along with Dr. Liz Blanchard, they were putting it together. They called up and they asked if Presley would sing "God Bless America," which she's done for me and with me, throughout the last year on the campaign trail and such. And so what we're doing is she was offered $50 to come in and sing, of course covering that expense. And then on her own, she decided, she said, well, it's a fundraiser, so I'm going to donate the money back to the veterans, which was the exact lesson I wanted her to get out of that is, it is a fundraiser, but we're going to help. So she's going to get up in front of about 250 to 300 people in a black tie affair, like kind of formal evening, and sing her little heart out. And so she's looking forward to that. She's all excited. I'm just proud to share things like that. For her at 8 years old to have the courage to stand up, like you said, public speaking. And I'm going to have her announce that she's donating the money so she can learn to public speak and not shy away from that. So that's something that we're looking forward to tomorrow evening.
That's outstanding.
That's
now, I understand
awesome.
On the 18th of November this month, we have a person of literary stature here in the studio, but it turns out we have two. You are a co-author or a contributor to a book project on legendary boxing coach Cus D'Amato.
Yes, I helped Larry Solomon he was the writer that worked with Tyson on documenting Cus D'Amato, my mentor, one of my important mentors in life, in addition to, of course, my own parents. So we documented Cus from when my father trained under him and with Floyd Patterson, and that was during an era when the underworld controlled the sport of boxing. It was truly controlled and manipulated by organized crime. So Cus single-handedly and completely on his own toppled that underworld organization by making Floyd Patterson heavyweight champion of the world. That was the big ticket. If you had the heavyweight champion, you controlled the sport. Eventually the IBC was disbanded after the Kefauver hearings. So it went all the way to the Senate, and it was a big, huge federal investigation, and Cus was the one that toppled that organization. And so the book, it's called Iron Ambition, and it's written kind of first person from Mike, and Mike tells all the stories from my dad or the fighters of that era, different generations, and the whole story. There's a through line story of Cus. And all they did and the sacrifices he made and what it took to accomplish his vision and what he did for that sport. He's pioneered pay-per-view TV, all the foreign TV rights. He created revenue. Floyd Patterson was the first fighter to actually earn $1 million and above. So there's just a lot of things. Cus was very influential and important in the sport of boxing, and it was fun to work on that project. So we're going to be at Barnes & Noble. That is going to be on November 18th. We're going to sign some books, and my dad and I will be there to kind of answer questions and tell stories about boxing and that era, and as well as my experience back in the 80s living and training with D'Amato and Tyson.
Wow, that's great, and that's this not this Saturday, but it's the Saturday, the 18th of November, 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the Barnes & Noble at Weberstown Mall. That's fantastic. Well, sure a lot of people will be there. It's going to be a very, very good event. Before we close out the show, do you have any closing thoughts you would like to add as we wrap everything up this week?
I want you guys to keep my seat warm, because when we get started on this Talking Trash project and we get further along into it, I want to come back and maybe bring some of the participants to talk more.
Let's do it.
About
and I'd love to hear their story and talk to them and give them their voice.
And hear some of the poems that they've created.
Absolutely. I'd love that. I look forward to that.
Supervisor, do you have any closing comments for this week?
I was a little concerned earlier. You were talking about Russian investigation.
That's only, you see, Paul Manafort and I, we shop at the same tailor. I have a penchant for expensive suits, as apparently he did. He and I have we shop at the same. We have. So
you were not alluding to my meeting with the Russians in New York this last week?
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, okay. It's because there's the idea of
what meeting?
So when I went to New York this last weekend, I met with a crew, a physicist and a bunch of writers that came in from Russia to document Cus D'Amato's boxing style. So they're fascinated by it. So I spent 2 days. First day was 4 hours of discussion on the philosophy of Cus and what it took, the mental preparation, understanding how fear is nature's way of preparing you for fight and flight, and all the many elements of Cus's. What Cus would constantly stress was the character, the integrity, building somebody's character and their strength of. And he defined the character as that quality from within, that no matter the circumstance or situation that one's faced, in spite of how they feel, but they rise to the occasion instead of collapsing and running from any such challenges. So Cuss was constantly working on and developing fighters' character, or his boys, as he would call us, his boys' character. And so we spent one day doing that, and then the next day we were in the gym, and I was demonstrating and showing and basically letting them document and illustrate the intricacies of Cuss's style and how effective it was. When you think about a boxing style, and to talk about Cuss's approach to boxing, the object of boxing is to hit and not get hit, but do it in a manner that excites the crowd. If you're jabbing and running around the ring, nobody's going to want to see you. But if you're coming in and you're slipping and moving and making somebody miss and making them pay, you're counterpunching. So when you think about when your offense is your defense and your defense is your offense, which would seem contradictory. You kind of think defense, you're back, you're laying back, you're blocking, and you're protecting. But Cuss was all about slipping into a position. Now you're in a striking. Now you've moved into a striking zone where you can hit and not get hit. Immediately you move to another position without getting hit, and you can strike again. So that it was a perpetual motion that early Mike Tyson exemplified, and of course captured the heavyweight championship of the world and excited an entire generation of boxing.
That's the sweet science.
Yeah, exactly, and it truly is. So I was there with the Russians, and we were documenting, but there was no collusion outside of boxing.
Any blows exchanged?
No, I didn't box anybody or anything. No, not at all.
Well, that's great to hear. Our next episode, when we return, either next week or the week thereafter, we are working on a date. The chairman or president, I'm not sure of his exact title, but Carlos Villalpudua, the leader of the local, of the San Joaquin County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, will be our guest to talk about his vision for that organization and the great work that they're doing and that they've done, and what they plan on doing in the year 2018.
And Carlos is a great voice and a strong leader in the community. He was 8 years as a county supervisor and legislative aide before that, and worked in different elements throughout the community.
In the private sector,
in the private sector, and in the public sector. He was worked and dedicated a lot to the community, and he was a fantastic supervisor.
Right. So that'll be a great show, and thank you.
Well, I do thank everybody for coming in today. Thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Tom.
I really appreciate it. And thank you,
Thank
Governor
you,
Don.
Ted.
Always.
Thank you, Don.
Everybody, cheers.